Sorry, I started
Oh,
a little late. I missed all the introductions.
no, it's okay. So shall we give it a quick start? We already started, but I think we more or less having the crowd. The others who didn't speak up yet, could you introduce yourself in the chat? Say your name, what organization you're with. So Meena, our guest speaker, today has an idea who's on the call. My name is Alain, and I'm stewarding the Credits for Communities Collective together with Nitin and Devika. So really nice to see also new faces to the call today. And the central point of meeting and growing the group of people, all community-based change makers or partners to communities, is to learn from each other. So the ideal scenario would be to hand over the floor to Meena, to listen to her and hear what she has done with technology and putting the agencies in the hand of the members of communities, and then go into a fireside question and answering. I think with that, and the question, if anybody objects of recording, because we're now recording and we would like to capture some of the learnings in a paper and publish it publicly, then put up your hands if you don't want that. But without further ado, I would say, Meena, if I say you're hosting a neighborhood app, I don't do rights to all the work you did, so I prefer to also hand it over to you and you tell us what you have been doing in the past few years in communities.
Yeah, okay, sounds great. Well, it's such a pleasure to be here. Marlene sort of invited me to this group years ago, and I'm glad to finally make the time to meet all you. And I know that you all have been working in this field for quite some time, and we share very similar values. So apologies if I'm, you know, preaching to the choir in a way, because I think we all believe that we need to do development in a completely different way. And I'll show you sort of like the bigger vision, which is a new economic system. There's just going to be a lot here. So please like break in, write a question in the chat, or just interrupt me. So I started at Atma Connect. So for those of you that are like Desi or Indian on the call or South Asian, Atma means, and I'll kind of be really open about sort of like the origins of this. It means soul, and it's about how the individual is connected to the collective, and how it's really one and the same, that it's sort of a hologram of one and the same. And I started it after having done several decades of work. So I'm an environmental engineer. I've been working on water and sanitation around the world. And I went through this journey where, and I also worked on environmental justice in the United States. So really working with marginalized communities to advocate for their basic rights. I'd gotten, as part of my last organization, a USAID project in Indonesia to create a water SMS system. It was a way for urban poor communities to text in their information on water service issues and needs. And everything that happened in that project, I was like, this is why development is failed, basically. And it was, for over $1 million, because USAID, I'm sorry, actually, I probably shouldn't say that, like all of these things, but it was typical of how development agencies were working in the past. That for 3 years, we had every outcome and output sort of pre-established. And so when we were doing human-centered design interviews with people in the community, we weren't able to change what we were creating based on what we were hearing from them. And when we looked at what was being done with technology in the space, it was generally about telling people living in poor communities what to do, or collecting information from them in the service of larger institutions and organizations. So we were completely missing the fact that these folks had power and the ability to build that power by connecting with each other. And so I wanted to create something that just wasn't being done, which was multi-directional communication in, poor or low income or marginalized communities. Like, how do we make them a irrepressible force by connecting them with one another? And so I started Atma Connect about 8 or 10 years ago, and really wanted to create something that was bigger than Facebook, bigger than Twitter, all the X, all the things. It's like, why is it that, so, and I live right now in the Bay Area, I'm between a few places, but in my backyard, there were these massive tech companies that had reached 1 billion people, for what purpose? And so how could we take the ways that these companies had built such a large user base and apply it to social good? And so it was taking a human-centered design approach, like putting the individual and their needs at the center, and taking a lean startup approach. So it's launching, iterating, constantly asking folks, how can we make this better for you? And then shifting based on what you hear to create something that really responds to their needs. So that's what we did. We won a Tech for Good startup weekend. And of course, the tech advisors in Silicon Valley were like, focus, focus, focus. I mean, like, think about how Facebook started, right? It was like focused on college students in the US, initially Harvard. And so we started to focus, we started our focus on water in urban poor communities. So in Jakarta, we launched our first platform, and it was a way for people to share water price information with each other, because as you know, in many of these communities, there's not piped water supply, and people who don't have piped water supply are paying 40 times more per liter for water. And so how could we increase the economic efficiency and sort of like improve the affordability of water? And so we launched this app, learned a lot, and we kept asking our users, how can we make this better for you? And they said it would be it's fine to share water prices with our neighbors, but really we would like to share a lot more than water prices with our neighbors. And so we did what most nonprofits, fail to do, which is we threw away what we had developed. We said, you know what, this is maybe what we had promised to our funder, but this is actually not what communities want, or this is not what our users want. And so we threw away what we developed, redeveloped, and created a hyper-local social network so that people could share information with their neighbors. And immediately it started being used in Jakarta around the chronic flooding that comes around every year, several times a year. People were sharing information about flooded streets, safe routes through the city. They were sharing the location of government flooding shelters, and they were using it for a whole range of mutual aid activities. It was a gap that we didn't even know existed in the space of disaster. And so that's how we really got on the map and grew, which was people started to use it in disaster. They started to use it to find jobs, to find employees for their small businesses, like a coffee shop in a community. They started to use it to organize groups in the community to monitor government budgets, to gather together to fix roads or desilt rivers. And so we were going through the entire cycle of agency, from responding to disaster to preventing the next disaster. So advocating with governments, also gathering together to plant mangrove trees, which reduce the risk of sea level rise and wave events. So it was a whole range of activities that were happening on the platform. One of our donors, Qualcomm, did an independent evaluation of AtmaGo and what was happening on the platform, and they found that at a scale of they found that people were taking early action as a result of an early warning on AtmaGo. And they were moving valuables, they were warning their neighbors, they were evacuating. They quantified the impact of these actions and found that at a scale of 1 million people, this was $100 million in avoided economic losses and over 6,000 years of healthy life saved every year. So that, and I can show you sort of some of that, and then talk to you about sort of how we've evolved. And you know, if you all have questions, I'm happy to answer them now, or I'll just put some of these things on the screen. Okay, so here's, let me see here. So here's this is just sort of like how we're pulling out from this is about the neighbors, this is about AtmaGo and the kinds of, this is, you know, the kinds of things that people are sharing on there, how they can post, the different categories in which they can post. This is how it looks to get an emergency alert. And in addition to the emergency alert, it's everything that you need in order to take action on that emergency. And sort of how you're getting into like the specific area, the locations, the topics, and the communities that you're interested in. And then this is, you know, these were when we categorize the kinds of posts that people were having on different issues. And so here you could see some of the latest posts from Indonesia and Puerto Rico. Okay, so let me see. Here it is live. Actually, I'm gonna show you. So I'll translate it to English here. Okay, so yeah, the kinds of things that people are sharing about jobs that are available, different topics, you know, some of the latest news that people are sharing in different areas. And then I want to show you sort of how we evolved this. So, you know, the reality is, how is it that most tech companies are receiving funds? It's through advertisements, and we didn't want to sort of necessarily go in that direction. There were some risks to it in terms of the social good mission that we had. And so we started to look at how could we provide more value for our highest value users. So there were certain, there's a small minority of users that were having the most impact on the platform. And these were community leaders, people that were organizing the biweekly garbage cleanups in their neighborhood, that were preventing the risk of flooding, that were organizing the tree planting events, or organizing women in the community for hydroponics trainings. And so how could we provide more value for these community leaders who are really sort of the nodes of the network, and in that way create a new way for sort of a new system, so on top of the sort of like individual to individual, the peer-to-peer system, create another layer, which was the community leader and the community effort and organization. the overarching goal for this was to find a way to, so as you know, many donors in development or in climate, for example, one of our board members is at the Green Climate Fund. And he says the minimum check he writes is $25 million. And so how could we have it be just as easy for him to write a $25 million check and fund 10,000 community projects that are achieving a goal of planting 1 million trees or training 10,000 women, so that all of these smaller points of light are collected together and being offered as a documented, aggregated, and validated in ways that large donors, corporate social responsibility efforts, foundations could be funding many more smaller organizations and initiatives to really bring localization to life through an infrastructure that enabled it. And so that's what we created, and I'll show it to you and also show you sort of like the what we see as the overall infrastructure and how we've built the infrastructure for different projects. Okay, so here's, and I want to make sure that you guys see this in detail. So what we see as, sort of like the 3 legs of the stool for an infrastructure to support local impact at scale is first, this ability for new organizations and like community leaders to have a way to build their capacity and receive technical assistance. So if they're working to reduce climate impacts in their communities, that they have a way to learn and to gather information and to know how to evolve in that journey to be a change maker. The second leg of the stool is helping these organizations to be able to connect with and assist one another through a networking and collaboration center. So a collaboration platform that is sharing best practices and helping folks to learn from one another, so that we're creating an economy of scale in knowledge through these connections. And the third leg of the stool is the ability to document the impact that these smaller initiatives are having, validate this impact, and aggregate this impact in a way that money can flow to it. Okay, so I'm going to bring up some of these various tools. And if you all have questions, please go ahead and like jump in. I'll bring up the next set of things I wanted to show you. Okay, so we've created parts of this platform for many organizations, and most recently, I don't know how many of you are in the United States, but as part of the large sort of climate funding through the Inflation Reduction Act, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and the U.S. Department of Energy and the U.S. Department of Transportation have been putting resources into environmental and climate justice and localization. So getting funds into frontline communities that are implementing environmental justice and climate justice solutions. And as part of that, we are part of a team that is creating the national infrastructure for this. And the elements that we're creating for this are, one, a way for local organizations to find funding to support their efforts. The second thing that we've created is a collaboration platform for all of the technical assistance centers to be able to share their knowledge and information so they can better serve communities. And the last piece that we're going to create there is a knowledge sharing center on environmental justice. So all of these pieces, and then our bigger goal in that in environmental justice is making visible, you know, the tens of thousands of these projects around the country, so that they can be, so we don't have a grant writing system anymore. So all of this impact is documented and shared, and money can just, we're just unlocking, you know, funding at scale for supporting these decentralized efforts. Okay, so some of these things are internal, so I'm just gonna kind of flash it on the screen because they're, you know, they're not public. Okay, so let me share with you guys again. Okay, so yeah, so here's the website for the Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Centers Network. And this is something that we just launched last week publicly. And, you know, this is sort of like information on how we're working to serve communities to access funding and technical assistance. And so this is sort of like the, you know, a database and a way for small organizations to be able to find funding that's right for them for the particular project that they're trying to achieve. And this is it's for the US. And so here's, let's say it's a small organization, the maximum award that they would be able to manage from the federal government would be something like 500,000. And this is one of my favorite things that we did is that, you know, why apply for a grant or funding where it's, you know, there's one that's going to be awarded. Let's find something where there's over 50 or over 25 expected number of awards. And here's, you know, the kinds of things that come out, like the kinds of grants that are applicable. So that was one of the things that we created. And let's see here. And then I'm going to see if we can find this. Okay, so let me, I'll show you the collaboration platform, which maybe I'm not able to show because this is being recorded. So that's an internal collaboration platform for all of the technical assistance centers. And I'll show you there are 16 that were funded, can coordinate and communicate with each other across the country to share, you know, how they're addressing community needs, how they're reaching out to communities, how they're dealing with, you know, sort of some complex things like the Paperwork Reduction Act and things like that. So it's for all of these centers to coordinate. What's interesting is that US EPA, US Department of Energy, and Department of Transportation are all also now on the platform. So this is sort of for all of these entities to collaborate with one another. And that's kind of how we're working that. I wanted to also show you sort of like the last piece, which we've created in other places, and eventually we'll be creating in the US, this knowledge sharing platform. No, sorry, wrong thing. So for the Nature Conservancy, we created this knowledge sharing platform, and created different entry points. So think of this as a choose your own adventure. If, you know, based on the hazard that you faced or the nature-based solution to reduce disaster risk, or where you are in the project that you can enter to, you know, to sort of to start a project. And so here's, you know, sort of like how folks can move through the different stages of a project. And different case studies, links, the tools for each of these kind of efforts. And yeah, I am sorry, I know I'm taking kind of a long time. I'll wrap up here. So I wanted to show you the community platform in Indonesia. And so people are sharing kind of what they're doing in different communities. And they're also sharing the actions that they're taking and documenting those actions, whether it's like perfect. So this is a project where this is Red Cross. So we partner with a lot of organizations, and Red Cross is one of them. Red Cross, Mercy Corps, et cetera, in Indonesia. And this is sort of like what a recent activity that was completed where people were trained on disaster recovery and then how to use the internet in disaster. And so they were documenting that here. And then the other piece that I want to show you here is, and so here, this says there's a disaster alert, an earthquake here, which you can click on. And here's this knowledge sharing platform. Let me just make sure I translate this to English so you can see. A knowledge sharing platform for community support organizations in Indonesia. And so a whole set of classes and modules and tools that an organization can go through. First, they can evaluate their organization's performance index through this web-based evaluation, and then get recommended resources to increase their capacity and ability to execute projects. Okay, so this all seems like a lot of things, and it all fits into our vision of what is the infrastructure to enable more locally led change. And this fits within sort of our bigger vision, which is a new pro-social infrastructure for society and the economy that's undergirded by technology. And we call it the Plentyverse. This is something that came up through years of discussions over the last few years with another Ashoka Fellow. I'm sorry, I don't think this is, okay, here we go. Now you're seeing it. And so, we see sort of the direction of technology now, which is leading to this further disconnection from real impact on the ground. This inability to face growing threats from climate change, increasing alienation, conflict, sort of the structure of technology and technology algorithms create these echo chambers that divide people, increasing inequality as certain folks have the benefits of the economic development opportunity and other folks don't. And our vision, everything that we're building is towards this transformative new infrastructure, where what we're using technology to do is build more connection between people so they can become, it's an everyone a change maker world where everyone is seen, recognized for the value they're providing. Resources flow to that value they're providing. We're seeing and documenting and making visible the real world impact, and we're enabling collective action. And a project that we have right now sort of pending, we've proposed to Cisco Foundation, and our conversations about that is working with the Fundación Pachamama in Ecuador to pay forest protectors in indigenous communities for the work they're doing in protecting forests. So planting trees, preserving areas of forest, all of these things to be able to to pay them for it. It's actually very difficult for our partner organization to get funds into these places. These are unbanked populations. And so how can we use a technology that almost everyone has to give them tokens that can be exchanged when they go to a central location, but to sort of collect the evidence of their the results they've made, the impact they've had, and pay them for it directly through this forest protector platform. So that is sort of another piece in this mix. Okay, so I shared a lot, and I will be open for questions.
Thanks, Meena. It's super exciting. I mean, I'm so excited, and each time I listen to your story, it has happened even more. And I can launch a first question, but I don't, because that's too Dutch and too direct. So I offer this space for others first to go first and pop a few questions that are on your mind. I'm sure you're as excited as I am. So who?
Can I invite Jacob? Jacob, you had a lot of great points in the chat, and I know people don't go into the chat, so go ahead and please share them.
Yeah, no, thank you. So yeah, no, and Meena, it's great to see you again. We were part of Connective Impact a while ago, and great to see how your platform has continued to evolve. And so like I really love this idea of those community catalysts and systems orchestrators. And so what I was saying in the chat was, you know, this idea that I've thought of as like a trust fund that these local activators or catalysts can have annually, where they're able to be more direct with their action. They don't have to go through a lot of those hoops and structures. And what I said, it seems like your platform could be a way to add that accountability piece where you could track the progress of these catalysts and visualize and see that. And, you know, also was just the question I was having, it seems like, you know, and here in the States, especially in college campuses, like with protests and when does something, you know, I know that like a natural disaster is a natural disaster is you know, like tornadoes that just went through Iowa yesterday and all the ones that are happening in the United States, and hurricanes and fires. But is there sort of like a do you limit the types of disasters that you're able to track, or are there other ways to open it up to similar sort of ramblings? And maybe need to stop and just throw it back to you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's no limit to the value. I mean, I think we don't have the hyper local social network throughout the US. We are in Puerto Rico, which is a territory of the US with it. And I can show that to you. And that happened after Hurricane Maria, when Mercy Corps asked us to come in and help there. And yes, so in Puerto Rico, people are obviously dealing with climate impacts like hurricanes, and they're using Atma to deal with issues that arise in disaster. So after the hurricane, 80% of the food is that Puerto Rico consumes is imported. And in disaster, those links are broken. And so there's a huge food insecurity that happens on the island. And so people are using it to organize community gardens and sharing information about that. And so there's an unlimited number of uses, you know, for something like this. And yeah, it can be used in every disaster, every community action. All of it can be documented and made, you know, help to spread.
Maybe on that note, Meena, I do have the question. So we could you, as so at Kula Loans, we work with really like groups of 20 people, and then they start doing. So let's say those groups, and this is just tens of 50 of them, let's say. But if they would like to get started, and with one group, 20 people, could they start a hyper local social network with the 20 of them, and then maybe, of course, tell to the neighbors and get it going? Is that an entry point for your platform? Could they start in whatever country they are?
Yes, I mean, that's exactly how we started. So it was, the initial folks that we talked to that came on to the platform. And then later we were getting requests for other cities to be added, right? Because like somebody's brother lived in another city and that got added. So now we're in over 300 locations, and it was like that. So it would start because someone would request that location be opened up. Yes, and what's great about this is that this loan group could sort of interact in whatever way in their community, and I can show you sort of how the community impact platform works, and then also see what's happening in other communities. One of the things that we've been thinking about and has been requested is like, can some of the posts be made private to the group and some of the posts be made public? And so that's something that we could add. But yeah, it's inspirational to see that, we're all working on these things, and also to see what can we learn from these things across different groups.
And what have you learned when, I mean, I can imagine that if only a handful of groups starts using this platform because we suggest them to do it, that it's not yet very fruitful for them, only if there's a certain number, right? So what would you suggest to get them to grow the number of people that use this platform in their own community, to get it to a level that it's really like a social network, right? You need some numbers for it. Can you share
Yes.
some of your
Yes.
insights how to get there? Yeah.
Yes, this is like the thing that I think most people don't understand is building the technology is one thing, like honestly, there's 10,000 platforms out there that, billions of dollars of development investment have built, and most of them don't exist anymore. So that's like just what happens. It's easy to build something. It's much harder to get somebody to get groups to continue to use it. And how you do that is by providing value for them. And that requires a lot of community, like talking to them about what is it that motivates them, that inspires them. And so, for example, we had an issue on Atma Go where we really wanted to increase the number of women users on the platform. And so we found that in talking to women, even a college educated woman living in Jakarta is feeling like, what do I have to share on a platform, what that could help others. And so we implemented some things like citizen journalism trainings and digital literacy trainings to help people realize they had, especially women, realize they had like valuable information to share, and that their voice was like welcome and needed in this community platform. And that and a number of things I'm going to share right now, we have over 50% of the folks of the people that come to our platform are women. So we've, been able to shift this issue dramatically. And another thing that we did is we talked with when we were doing focus groups with women, they said, they wanted some kind of friendly competition among their neighbors. And so we implemented gamification so people could earn points for the posts that they were sharing and the replies and their interaction. And so all of those things are part of it. So doing all of these sort of like growth hacking kinds of things like gamification and point systems, and like you know, move up into different categories. Like you start out as an Atma goer, and then you move up to like, you know, you can move up to like an Atma Go professor, you know, all these things. And fundamentally, where we were like, how do we magnetize people to this platform? It's about, you know, I think money is one of those things. Money is energy in our system. And so this is one of the reasons we started this community impact platform to quantify the impact that people were having, and eventually be able to get, whether it's foundations or companies or governments, to be able to directly fund this impact, right? So that what they were getting value as a result of what they were sharing on the platform. And that's, you know, we're still working on cracking that nut. We want, you know, some folks to, you know, really like help build that flow. We're creating new flows in the economic system, and we need some early movers to make it happen. Yeah, Robert.
Yeah, if I just wanted, this is very, very helpful to me and quite inspiring. Question for you would be the application of this approach to the poorest of the poor, economically active in the informal economy, where different languages are used. And in fact, you know, in Central America, for example, dealing with savings group formation, we found that there are a lot of different Mayan languages that were the first language of many of the people we were working with, rather than Spanish. But in that environment, in the completely informal part of the local economy, are you seeing some applications? It seems to me you would be. Just what we learned is that when you do savings groups, you're not just doing savings groups. You're forming groups of people that can defend themselves from abuse in their homes. You're forming groups that can help each other with their children when they need help with their children. I mean, all manner of things once you get people communicating, right? And working together, whether it's meeting in person or through technology. So can you just comment a little bit on how this can be applied to areas where there may be multiple languages, even in a given community? Where people might have to choose, of course, which language they want to use on the platform. But what is your experience? Has your experience been so far?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I will say, so my native place is India, and I did not kind of choose to start it there, because in India, there are many languages, 15 recognized, and so many more. And there's also literacy in your native language is not really high among the people that we would most want to reach. And at that time, I think things are evolving rapidly at that time to use a voice solution so that people could record a message. It just becomes more difficult for this multi-directional communication. And so that is one of the things that, you know, I will say is that so we started in the poorest community in Jakarta, and people are limited in the amount of data they can use on their phone. And so we did have to shift so that that was not, you know, sort of the barrier, so that people could start having that communication. And now, you know, once you establish the value, then you can start going into areas, you know, I think this is where philanthropic funding is so beneficial, because you can start doing things that are uneconomic, right? To really like put in the research and development to create a multi-language solution, and I mean, obviously we have a multi-language solution, but Red Cross, for example, had wanted us to come into for the migration crisis in South America, and there were multiple languages in use there, including YU, this indigenous community language. And so we would need to translate between. So if you were like viewing it in Spanish, that the indigenous language would be translated, et cetera. But we would love to do all of these things. And, you know, I think it's just finding the resources to make it happen. That GSMA award didn't come through, so we weren't able to do it. And we were partnering with Translators Without Borders in that case. And so, yeah, I mean, but AI is getting better in that. And so, you know, I think the costs are going to come down.
Thank you for that. I would just add quickly that I love the model because we learned what Jeff, my good friend, refers to as community geniuses. These are people who have just are there. They're already there. They've just instinctively created a role in their community to help others and to lead efforts of one kind or another, no matter what the circumstances. So I love your model. It depends on what we all know exists. There are leaders. There are people who I consider geniuses.
Yeah.
I think in solving problems in their communities. And so there's a ready market for what you're doing, I think.
Yeah, and I also want to give a shout out to, you know, you guys can check out Mauricio Miller's Peer-Driven Change. You know him. Okay, great. Yeah. I mean, that's his, I like the genius title, Robert, that you have, because I think Mauricio uses something else, like deviance. Honestly, I think he uses like deviance. That's his term.
Positive deviance.
Positive deviance, right? Exactly. Which I think geniuses is better. And ultimately, we're using that light of this genius to light up many others, right? So everyone can see themselves as the change maker they are. Okay, so Nitin.
Yeah, hi, Meena. So we had spoken long back before COVID. We had a call. Yeah, and nice to see so much progress on the platform. I think we had that call on through Ashoka on platform.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm really happy because I didn't realize, you know, I Jacob now, I'm like, that name sounds familiar. All these names sound familiar, but yes, I'm really happy to be gathering together again. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the first time.
That's okay. So I just have a very basic question. Like when you I see a lot of things happening on the platform. There is like this disaster connection, a lot of things there. Like, but when you promote the platform, like when you start promoting the platform, so what is it that you promote? Like, what's the core thing which is there? And again, the follow-up to that is what is the core thing which drives people to come back to the platform regularly?
Yeah, that's really good. Okay, so how do we market? How do we advertise it? You know, we really, I mean, I think that the tagline is neighbors helping neighbors. And so we do use that in a lot of our marketing. And it's also very targeted. So when we are in a community, and I do really want to say this is about online connected to offline. And so we'll have offline events to market the platform. And in certain communities, it's to sponsor a cleanup after a disaster. In other communities, it will be to bring women together who are interested in having an entrepreneurship training or a training on hydroponics. And so it's really about how are we bringing the community together to be able to improve their communities in whatever way they desire. And so I mean, another kind of way that we'd envision this is that we have sort of like, you know, so I think someone mentioned this community fund where we're just funding kind of like different applications and interests that communities have, whether it's, I want to fund, you know, a school cleanup, or I want to fund, a hydroponics training, or, you know, there's some solutions that come up on the platform where, anyway, so I'm going on and on, but we're very, You could say opportunistic about how we market the platform, but it's also just like speaking to people's where they are and what they're most interested in. And how do we get people to come back to the platform regularly? So there are tech tools and systems to do that. And that's so we do notifications. So we like send people an email and say, here's what's new in your neighborhood, right? So there's two things that like drive people. There's like fear of missing out and like this is going to benefit me. So we're, use all of those tech tricks. And what's interesting is that we send people messages about disasters that are happening in Indonesia or in a community they're following. And those have some of the highest open rates. We would send texts much more often, but it's quite expensive for us to do that. And we do it on occasion, when there's an emergency, we'll send an SMS. But it's those systems in Indonesia are expensive.
I want to, maybe we can take that part of the conversation offline. One of the things that we noticed, I mean, you mentioned grants and funds, which is, I think, true to what motivates people also to get into collective actions but moving funds internationally around has been so far for us quite a challenge, because you do need partners to get the money transfers done. But I would love to explore how we can make that easier, especially when we talk about relatively small funds for communities, how to do it. I mean, within a one country context, that's sort of easily done. But if you want to empower the millions of self-help groups out there with the millions of people that would, philanthropic, small kind impact investors that would like to support them, you do need some solutions for the international transferring of money. And of course, we all know the money laundry regulations, stuff like that. But I would love to maybe deepen the understanding on your thinking there and how to crack that nut, so to say.
Yeah, I do feel like we have ideas and solutions there. Absolutely. We want to make like remittances is such a huge a pool of money. How can we activate that money to also create more good?
Yeah. So I'm also aware of the time, so I would at least, I mean, it was a very exciting conversation, a lot of new information. Is there somebody else who would like to steal the last minute for a burning, urgent question? And that includes you, Meena, if you have a question to the crowd. Do take your chance.
No, this was really great. I mean, feel free to, I mean, I'm sure you all have my email, but feel free to follow up with me on any additional questions or, places you'd like to make this happen. And yeah, this is really exciting. Thank you.
Well, and vice versa. So you're always welcome. If you have a question like you feel the crowd can help you with, come back, please tell us your question. We organize the same kind of meetup and see if we can help each other. I think one thing is we can say about this group is we are all on that mission, how to get communities empowered and have the agency to self-develop. So